Do you realize that everything that you are or ever will be is going to be largely as a result of how you use your mind? And that if you improve the quality of your thinking by becoming more creative and more innovative, you can make more progress in 1 year than many people make in 5 years or 10 years? About 10 years ago, I became interested in the subject of creativity and innovation. And since then, I've read dozens of books. I've put together 1- and 2-day seminars. I've trained executives in some of the biggest corporations in America on creativity and innovation. In the next 55 to 60 minutes, what I'm going to do is give you 21 key ideas or concepts that you can use to think far better and far sharper, that you can use to accelerate your career, to remove obstacles and roadblocks, to achieve creative breakthroughs, and to get far more satisfaction, performance, productivity, and profit out of yourself and out of your business. Remember this, though. Creativity is a skill. It's like typing with a typewriter or riding a bicycle. You can learn the skill if you learn the systematic methods of creativity that we're going to talk about here. It's very much like a combination lock. If you don't know the combination to a lock, somebody could give you the lock and you could fool around with it for hour after hour after hour and achieve nothing. But if somebody gives you the combination, then you can spin it back, forward, and back again, and the lock falls open. Creative thinking methods are very similar to that. That if you use creative thinking methods on a regular basis, what you do is you develop a whole series of combinations that enable you to open the lock that blocks your progress, that keeps obstacles in place, that stops you from achieving your maximum potential as an individual, as a manager, and as a business owner. So let's go to the board and let's talk a little bit about creativity. And let's start off talking in the very simplest terms. The first of the 21 ideas, which I think is a critical starting point, number one is, what is creativity? Well, in my estimation, creativity is not painting the Sistine Chapel or great works of art or music. Creativity is simply improvement. Everything that you do that expands or improves the way things are done is a creative act. Let me say this at the beginning, too, is that the more you look for ways to improve activities on a day-to-day basis, the more creative you become. That your creativity is a latent force that lies, if you like, deep down within the recesses of your intelligence, and you can become more creative as you place more demands on your creative capability. Every single person has what is called a line of sight. In every organization, the line of sight is what you see when you look up. It's the job you do and what is going on around you. And everybody can find ways to improve what is going on in their line of sight. Let me just say this, that success in business life is directly proportionate to the quantity of new ideas that you come up with on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. A person who comes up with a continuous stream of good ideas, or even a continuous stream of average ideas, is a person who is destined to great success in business. People who come up with no ideas or very few ideas are usually stuck where they are. So look in your line of sight. What do you see around you that may lead to improvements? In 1975, Mazda Corporation of Japan had been decimated as a result of trying to introduce the rotary engine. Their profits were down to $5 million in that year, and they introduced a suggestion program where they encouraged people in the company to give suggestions on how they could do things better, faster, cheaper, easier, newer, and so on. And the first year, they got 200,000 suggestions. And they implemented 60% of the suggestions. A total of 120,000 suggestions were implemented. And they found a very interesting thing, is that although they had a reward system for good suggestions, the major reward that people reported to them was seeing their suggestion implemented in their line of sight. The satisfaction they got from coming up with an idea and seeing it applied was the big payoff. In 1980, only 5 years later, Mazda Corporation had made an astonishing turnaround. Their profits were up to $95 million. The number of suggestions was running at 2 million suggestions per year, and they were still maintaining a level of implementation of 60%. Profits had increased 1,800%, and the officials of Mazda Corporation said that the primary reason for it was the suggestion system, where they encouraged everybody to be innovative and be continually looking for ways to do things better. Now, as opposed to that 60% implementation, when we test the level of implementation of suggestions in American or Canadian corporations, we find that the level is about 10%. Now, if it's 10%, what does that mean? It means for every 10 suggestions that a person gives to the average corporation, 9 of them are rejected. What does this do to a person if they have 90% of their suggestions rejected on an average basis? Do you know what it does? They say, what the heck, forget it, it's not worth it. What's even worse than that is many companies encourage suggestions and then they ignore them if the suggestions are inconvenient. Now, all the work that's being done in excellence today, all the work that's being done in the best corporations shows that there's a direct relationship between ideas and profitability. Between ideas and profitability. It's because of the dynamic nature of our society, because of the competitiveness, because of the rapid obsolescence of products and services, that the more and better and faster ideas that you can generate within your organization, the more likely it is that you're going to survive and thrive in the years ahead. And an organization that does not continually come up with new ideas is an organization that is doomed. So, when we talk about organizations, we know that organizations are simply people. Organizations are simply you and the people around you. And this brings us back to what you might call the psychology of creativity. What are the factors that determine your creativity? Well, there are several factors. And again, we've studied the corporations that have high levels of innovation. And we find that looking at the individual to start with, there are 3 keys. One is your past experiences. Your past experiences have an awful lot to do with how creative you are. If you've been in environments in the past where ideas have been encouraged, where going back to early childhood, then you'll probably have sort of a positive attitude toward coming up with new ideas. If you've been in a negative environment, you'll have a negative attitude. And the second is your current situation. What is the environment around you today? Is there a lot of encouragement for new ideas? Do people laugh and get involved, or are they ridiculed or criticized? And the third part is your self-concept, or if you let us call it your self-image. Do you consider yourself to be a creative person? Do you think about yourself as a creative person? Because you know, in 95% of cases, based on the most exhaustive study, 95% of people have the potential to perform at highly creative levels. In fact, the work done by Howard Gardner at Harvard University suggests that everybody is a genius in at least some area. So the key to becoming creative, the key to unlocking your innate creativity, is to begin to think of yourself as a highly creative person. And here's the starting point. Repeat this statement over and over again. I am a genius. In our lengthier 2-day courses on professional and personal development, we train people to use affirmations and visualizations to repeat over and over again, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, I'm a genius. Now, this may sound a little bit silly, but what happens is when you repeat it over and over again, the first few times you say it, you think it sounds a little foolish because you're really not a genius. As you keep repeating it over and over, though, eventually your subconscious mind, which has resistance to the idea, says, you're not a genius. You say, yes, I am. I'm a genius. Subconscious mind says, no, you're not. You're a dummy. You say, no, I'm a genius. You haven't had a good idea in 5 years. No, but I'm a genius. And you keep repeating it over and over again. The subconscious mind, which has stored away every single bit of information you have ever taken in your life, billions of bits of information, has got all stored away permanently. Eventually, if you repeat, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, over and over again, eventually that message is driven into the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind begins to formulate and combine and recombine assembled information and pop it up to the surface of your mind in the form of ideas to enable you to solve the problems that you're wrestling with. So even though it sounds funny, just keep saying it over and over again. I'm a genius, I'm a genius. I've had hundreds, thousands of people come back to me and say, it's amazing how smart they become when they start to change their self-image and affirm over and over again that they are creative, that you are innovative, that you are a genius. And before this course is over, you will know and you will feel like a genius. Now, a couple of other things with regard to that is that there's a very direct relationship in an organization between happiness and creativity. Happiness and optimism and creativity. Why should this be? Well, the fact is that everybody is inherently creative, that you are innately creative just the same as you breathe in and breathe out, have ears, eyes, and so on. You also have creativity. Creativity is a tool that is provided to man by nature to deal with reality. Everybody has it. The only difference is that some people use a lot of it, some people use very little. In fact, recent research suggests that the average person, yourself, driving to and from work, has about 4 ideas per year, any one of which would make them a millionaire if they were to pursue the idea. Any one of which would make you wealthy. But you know why we don't pursue those ideas? It's because we say, well, It's our idea. It can't possibly be of any value. The fact is that you probably have 4, sometimes 40 ideas every year, any one of which would enable you to fulfill all your dreams as a human being. Another key point with regard to creativity is that wherever people feel valued, wherever people have high self-esteem and feel important and valued and respected in an organization, creativity bubbles forth naturally. And a perfect example of this is wherever you have a household that has happy children, you have creative children. You have curious children. You have inquiring children, children that ask questions and touch and taste and smell and feel and get into things. So creating a creative environment simply means encourage creativity. Ask people to think about creativity, encourage people to laugh, encourage people to be positive, create an environment where creativity is valued and respected, and say over and over again, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, I'm a genius. The quality of calm confidence in your creativity is one of the most powerful forces in stimulating your subconscious mind into giving you ideas. Just accept, like the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, that you are a genius, that ideas come to you naturally and in abundance and to solve every problem that you face. Now, how do we stimulate creativity? Well, creativity is stimulated by 3 key factors. Number 1, we'll put this as A, is keenly desired goals. The more intensely you desire a goal, the more likely it is you will be creative in the accomplishment of that goal. That's why we say there are no non-creative people. They're just people who simply don't have goals that they want badly enough. And the more you want it, the more intensely you desire to accomplish a specific objective, the more likely it'll be that your mind will crackle with ideas to help you get there. The second is pressing problems. Pressing problems. Pressing problems also stimulate creativity. If there is a problem or an obstacle that is stopping you from achieving something that is important to you, you'll be amazed at how creative you'll become in your ability to remove it. And C is focused questions. Focused questions. And throughout the rest of this course, we're going to talk about questions that you can ask, but there is nothing that unlocks creativity faster than your ability to ask questions that penetrate to the core of a subject. For instance, one of the best questions you can ask are questions that test assumptions. Here's a good question. In any problem, difficulty, or obstacle that you're facing right now, what are your assumptions? What are your obvious assumptions? What are your hidden assumptions? And the second question is, once you've identified your assumptions, could they be wrong? Do you know that wrong assumptions lie at the root of every failure and every mistake? So whenever you're facing a situation where you're up against the wall, you're facing conflict or difficulty, ask yourself, what are my assumptions? Maybe your assumptions are wrong, and if you ask those questions and you ask other questions, which we'll suggest to you as we go along, you'll be amazed at what will start to bubble to the surface of your mind. Okay, here's the standard method of problem solving. Number 4, it's a standard method. It's something that you can use continually, but it is a logical method, and we'll talk about how important that is later. Standard method takes you through a very simple series of steps. Step number 1 is define the problem. Again, in most cases where we wrestle with problems for long periods of time, we have not taken the time to sit down and clearly define what it is we're wrestling with. As many as 50% of problems are resolved with clear definition, surprisingly enough. Fuzzy thinking is a major obstacle to success in the world of work. Clear thinking is absolutely vital to success. Number 2 is read, research, gather information. Read, research, and gather information. Once you've clearly defined the problem, do what Harold Janine says, get the facts. You see, many of our problems come from having facts that aren't facts at all. Get correct information. Be aware that when a problem crops up, the information, the ideas, the facts, the research that you have right now may not be correct. I have had many situations where I have just simply taken the time to sit down, read, review, check, ask around, and here's another one. Ask others. Consult with others. Ask yourself 2 things with regard to B and C. I wonder who else may have had the same problem in the past and what they did about it, and start looking around. There are information banks all around where people have written about how they've resolved particular difficulties. Ask others who may have had similar problems or who know someone or some organization that may have had similar problems. You don't have to start from scratch in most cases. D is try consciously to solve the problem. Try consciously. In other words, think of everything that you possibly can to solve the problem. And if you don't get an answer, what you do is you let go of the problem. Release the problem and get your mind busy elsewhere. Just release it completely and get your mind busy elsewhere. And it's amazing that once you do that, the problem is turned over to your subconscious and superconscious minds, and they go to work on it, and they'll often bring you the answer exactly when you require it. And one final point is review the problem before sleeping. Review before sleeping. Many of our great geniuses have found that because your subconscious and superconscious mind is working 24 hours a day, if you will sit down for a few moments before you go to sleep, and what I normally do is I'll write out my next day's schedule before I go to sleep, and I'll think about what I have to do the next day, what the problems and difficulties are, and I'll lay them out, and then put them and turn them over to your subconscious mind and go to sleep. What will often happen is that you'll wake up in the middle of the night with an answer. It's called the eureka phenomena. Suddenly you'll have what is called illumination. Or you'll wake up in the morning, and you get up in the morning, and the answer is there, just like a butterfly has alighted on your shoulder. Or you'll be in the shower, and the answer will come to you. Or you'll be driving to work, and the answer will come to you. Very, very important point. When you do get answers like this, when you do get breakthrough ideas or solutions, be sure to write them down quickly. Keep a pad next to your bed. Keep index cards in your car or your pockets. Keep a pad handy in your bathroom so that when an idea does come to you, you can write it down quickly and not forget it. There's a beautiful saying that says, catch the idea and write it down. Almost like a bird or a butterfly. Catch the idea and write it down. Sometimes an idea that flits through your mind may save you a year or 5 years of hard work. One good idea is all you need to start a fortune. So if you do get that idea, by all means, grab it and write it down. Now, this brings us to a 20-idea method. Powerful method for focusing your mind. And in my estimation, through my own experience, more people have become wealthy and successful using this simple method than any other method of creative thinking and problem solving that I've ever heard of. And it's so simple that all it requires is discipline and repetition to do it. We call this is number 5, we call this the 20-idea method. Again, it's one of the methods that we teach in our extended courses. It's called mindstorming. Mindstorming is a way of concentrating your mind. Mindstorming is a way of focusing your mind with tremendous intensity so that you can draw deep down into your creative resources and channel them like a laser beam at your problem. And what you do is simply this, is you take a page of paper and you take your most pressing problem or goal and you put it at the top of the page in the form of a question. For instance, if your difficulty is you want to increase your sales from $250,000 to $350,000 in the next 12 months, you say, what can we do to increase our sales to $350,000 in the next 12 months? The more specific the problem, the more specific the question, the better. And then you sit down and you write 20 answers to this. You force yourself to keep writing until you get to 20 answers. It's a very, very simple technique which you can apply by yourself, or you can apply it with a group with flip charts or whiteboards. But you keep asking this question over and over again until you have 20 answers. The interesting thing is that the first couple of answers will be difficult, the next few answers more difficult, but the final answers will be terribly, terribly difficult. As a matter of fact, sometimes the last 3 or 4 answers will be like wresting blood from a stone. However, in my classes with senior executives, often they have found that the 20th answer is the answer that makes the difference. Write down the first thing you think, write down the opposite of it, write down a synthesis of it, write down ridiculous answers. Just force yourself to get 20 damn answers on the page, and surprisingly enough, sometimes an answer will leap out of the page. It'll be something you've looked for a long time. I had one man who went through this exercise, and he said he found the answer, number 17, was what he'd been looking for 6 months, and it changed his business, turned his whole business around. And then take at least one idea and implement it immediately. Take at least one idea off that page and implement it immediately. As a matter of fact, if you stop this tape, stop this course, went on right now, and just did this for the next 30 days, you would have had 10 times the value of any time and money that you've spent on this course up to now. That's how valuable this idea is. I have been absolutely astonished. The difference it's made in my life and the lives of others has been fantastic. Okay, here's some focused questions. Focused questions are the mark of the truly intelligent person. If you learn to ask focused questions of yourself, you can then ask focused questions of other people. Here's the first focused question. Ask, what is it that we're trying to do? What are we trying to do? Second focused question is, how are we trying to do it? What are we trying to accomplish? How are we trying to accomplish it? Keep going over that and over that and over that. Makes you think more and more clearly. Ask yourself, what result or outcome do we desire? What outcome? What would it look like if you achieved success in this? What would the outcome actually appear like? And describe the outcome clearly in words. Would the outcome be happiness, success, expansion, market position, low debt? What would the outcome be that you desire? Here's another one, is how else? How else could we approach it? If we weren't doing it this way, how else could we approach it? What would be another different way of approaching it? Is there a better way? Here's E. Is there a better way? And of course, as you know, there's always a better way. Whatever you are doing now, there's a better way to do it, and probably a way that would achieve success faster. Ask yourself again, what are our assumptions? What are your assumptions? Remember, assumptions often stand as a major block to creative breakthroughs until you start to question them, until you start to examine them. And finally, the next one, E, F, G, is, could your assumptions be wrong? Could your assumptions be wrong? Errant assumptions lie at the root of every failure. Errant assumptions lie at the root of every failure. Number 7 is develop the qualities of a genius. Remember that intelligence is more a way of acting than IQ. And if you act and behave the same way highly intelligent people do in wrestling with a problem, you will be astonished. You will become as intelligent and as effective as them. So what are the characteristics of genius? Well, in all the research that's been done, they find there are 3 major characteristics of genius, all of which have nothing to do with your IQ level. Remember, self-image, self-concept, how you think about your intelligence is more important than your actual intelligence. Attitudes are more important than facts when it comes to creativity. Characteristics of genius. A is that geniuses have the ability to concentrate single-mindedly on one thing at a time. Geniuses have all developed the ability to engage in intense concentration on the question or problem at hand. Non-geniuses are not able to concentrate. Their minds are all over the place. They're diverted and distracted with everything that comes up. Geniuses can shut out everything and just dwell single-mindedly on the problem. Number 2 is, and oh, by the way, there's a really good suggestion here. It just says just swarm all over it. When you do have a problem or difficulty in your way, instead of picking away at it a little bit here and a little bit there, make the decision to get on it now, and stay with it and carry it through until you've found a solution. Amazing, you can make so much progress that way, or progress. The second B is the ability to see the big picture. A characteristic of geniuses is that they can see causal relationships. And here's a way that you can, if you like, develop the ability to see causal relationships, which is to look at yourself, your business, your work, as part of an organic system. An organic system means that it touches and is affected by and affects customers, suppliers, bankers, people, international trade, different companies, different competitors, and so on. Look at the big picture and look at how things that are going on in your company may be being caused by other things. Instead of looking upon the event as a discrete thing, look at it all the things that might have led up to the event. Look at it all the things that may lead away from the event. And think of your situation as part of a bigger picture, and look at all the different interrelationships. Another key point that I have here is avoid attachment. One of the things that puts the brakes on creative thinking is that we come up with an idea and we become attached to it. We marry the idea, and then we invest our ego in selling the idea to someone else. Try to stay detached from the idea. Try to look at as many different ideas as possible. Keep an open mind. Stay flexible. Look at even an idea that looks fantastic. Avoid the tendency to embrace the idea until you've looked at all possibilities. And C is the ability to use a systematic method of problem solving. Like, what's the first thing they teach you when you go to school? Well, one of the first things they teach you is mathematics. And they teach you 2 plus 2 is 4. 3 plus 3 is 6. 10 plus 1 is 11. 12 plus 23, carry the 2, and so on. They teach you systematic, logical methods to solve problems in mathematics. And we find that all geniuses approach problems systematically. All non-geniuses, or people of average intelligence, approach their problems in a helter-skelter, pell-mell sort of way. And we'll give you a couple of systematic methods you can use. The 20-idea method, by the way, very powerful systematic method that forces you to concentrate, look at the big picture, keep an open mind, and it is systematic and simple as pie. Okay, the 8th method that I have here are some mind-stimulating exercises. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can stop the tape as I ask you these questions and give yourself maybe 30 or 60 seconds to answer each of the questions, or you can make a note of the questions and come back later. Here are the questions to stimulate your mind. Question A, what are your 3 most important goals in life right now? What are your 3 most important goals in life right now? Remember, this is really key to stimulating creativity, is knowing what your 3 most important goals are. B, another question, which is very simple, is what are your 3 most pressing problems? What are your 3 most pressing problems? What are the things that are causing you the greatest amount of anxiety, stress, or irritation right now? Once you've identified them, see, then you can start to use your creative thinking to find solutions. C is ask yourself, describe your ideal situation in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. What's your ideal job, ideal income, ideal position? I'll just write 3 to 5 years. What is your ideal position? Where would you like to be in 3 to 5 years? What would it look like? Where would you like to live? What would you like to be doing? Who would you like to be working with? What kind of a life situation would you desire? And D, ask yourself, if you had no limitations at all, if you could do anything, be anything, accomplish anything, what one great thing would it be? What one great thing would you dare to dream if you knew you could not fail? What one great thing would you dare to dream if you knew you could not fail? What one great thing? Imagine if you're absolutely guaranteed of success in any one thing in the whole world, what would it be? Well, you will find that if you can identify it, you can use some of the methods that we'll talk about as we go on to achieve it. Now, this brings us to number 9. And number 9 is a simple mental tool that you can use that says, here is you, and here is your goal. This is basically the way the world works. There's you, and there's a path that leads you to your goal, and you're on the path to your goal at any given time. But this is where you are now. Maybe the path goes like this. It also says that between you and your goal, there are many obstacles, some which you know, some which you can't see, but it also says that in almost every single path to any goal, there is a major obstacle blocking the way. It is the number 1 obstacle, and we call this your rock. This is the number 1 obstacle. This is the obstacle that you must remove, or get around, or get over, or get past, or get through in order to achieve your most important goal. And the question is, what is your rock? You see, it is the identification of your major obstacle and the focusing of all of your mental energies on blasting that obstacle out of the way that will help you make more progress towards your major goal than if you removed all of the other little obstacles put together. The biggest mistake that human beings engage in is they do what is fun and easy rather than what is right and necessary and difficult. They play around with all the little obstacles and the day-to-day problems, and they ignore this massive rock that sits there that is the primary obstacle to stop you from getting to where you're going. This is often called the limiting factor. You have to ask yourself in your work, in your business, what is the limiting factor? What is the one thing that stands in my way? It may be education. It may be knowledge. It may be capital. It may be sales. It may be expenses. It may be something else. But what is your limiting factor? What is the one thing that stands in the way of you achieving the successes that you desire? And once you've identified it, then swarm all over it. Concentrate all of your attention on getting rid of the big one, and do that to the exclusion of everything else. This brings us to number 10, 3 levels of thinking. 3 levels of thinking worthwhile for you to know. The first level is what is called the conscious level. This is the level that you're using right now. The conscious level is the analytical, objective mind that thinks, analyzes, rationalizes, decides, commands, and so on and so forth. It's the conscious mind. This is the input, if you like. This is where information comes into your brain. The second part is your subconscious. Now, your subconscious is in reality a major storehouse. It includes all the information that you have ever taken in your in your entire life. It's like a great memory bank or data bank that you can access with the right stimulation. And then we have the third mind, and the third mind is the most important of all for creativity. It's the superconscious. Now, there's all kinds of books that are being written today that talk about the superconscious mind. This is the seat of intuition. It's also the seat of creativity and imagination and motivation and excitement and enthusiasm. And it is the superconscious mind that brings you breakthrough ideas. So I want to talk, in the rest of this course, we will talk about methods, all of which are aimed at processing information from the conscious to the subconscious and triggering superconscious activity. And in superconscious activity, whenever you have a superconscious experience, what will happen is this, is that you will feel excitement. You will feel a jolt, if you like. In fact, again, in our Psychology of Achievement, the Phoenix Seminar, we explain a law of superconscious activity that says this, that any thought, plan, goal, or idea that you can hold consciously, hold in your conscious mind on a continuing basis, must and will be brought into reality by your superconscious mind. Any thought, any plan, any goal, any idea that you can concentrate on, dwell on, hold clearly and continuously in your conscious mind must and will be brought into reality by your superconscious. So we keep going back over and over again the importance of clarity, the importance of knowing what you want, the importance of concentration, the importance of dwelling continuously on what you're trying to accomplish, and especially keeping your mind off of your problems, off of your difficulties, off of your limitations. This superconscious capability requires clarity, commitment, conviction, and desire, and the superconscious mind in most cases is activated by intense emotion. The very best emotion is the emotion of desire, although the emotion of fear will also activate the superconscious mind, but in that case it can make you sick, it can make you angry, it can cause you all kinds of problems. Now, that being said, let's look at two types of thinking. There are two basic types in creativity. Two types of thinking. And again, a lot of work has been done on this, and basically what they say is this, is that there is what is called mechanical thinking. Now, mechanical thinking is rote thinking. Mechanical thinking is automatic thinking. It's also black-white thinking. Let me give you a description. It's black-white. These are people who see things as either or, black or white, good or bad, no shades of gray in between. This is also dogmatic thinking. Dogmatic thinking means that these people have very fixed ideas that are inflexible and irreversible. It's inflexible thinking, too. It's also rigid thinking. It also tends to be pessimistic. And it looks for reasons why things won't work and don't work. It also tends to be non-creative. And also the favorite words of this person are no. They have what is called psychosclerosis, which is a hardening of the attitudes. Now, the other type of thinking is what is called adaptive thinking. And this is the kind of thinking that you want to learn to engage in. And by the way, everybody is here and moving in one direction or another with each response that you have to a difficult situation. Now, some people are mechanical in some things and adaptive in others. But the ideal is to become an adaptive thinker in as many things as possible. Now, an adaptive thinker has an open mind. An adaptive thinker is a person who avoids falling in love with their own ideas. An adaptive thinker has flexibility. An adaptive thinker is willing to look at many different sides of a question. An adaptive thinker is optimistic. They're optimistic in that they believe problems can be solved, and they look for happy solutions or positive solutions. An adaptive thinker is also creative. An adaptive thinker is also imaginative. An adaptive thinker recognizes that all questions remain open and their favorite word is yes or why not. So your objective is to become an adaptive thinker. Your objective is to try to keep an open mind on all subjects and to avoid judgment. The key to becoming an adaptive thinker, the key to becoming a highly creative thinker, is to suspend judgment in as many things as possible. Suspend judgment, refrain from judging, try to keep an open mind, and if you do make a decision on it, be flexible and willing to change the decision. This brings us to number 12, is 3 ways of thinking. If you like, ways of thinking. Types of thinking, methods of thinking, ways of thinking. And these are psychological ways. The first is visual. Some people are visual thinkers. They need pictures, graphs, charts. Some people are auditory thinkers. They need to hear it. They say, doesn't sound good to me, or I don't. These people say, I don't see it yet. These say, it doesn't sound good to me, or that does sound good to me. And the third are kinesthetic. Kinesthetic are people who think as a result of their feelings or movement. Now, when you're working on a problem, try them all. Write things down, talk out loud, walk around and move, do all kinds of things. Sometimes going for a walk in the park is a tremendous way for a kinesthetic thinker to get breakthroughs. Sometimes looking at pictures or drawing graphs and diagrams is a wonderful way for a visual thinker to get breakthroughs. And sometimes saying it aloud or hearing it aloud or discussing or dialoguing about it is a way for an auditory thinker. And each of us thinks in all 3 of these ways, but we all have a predominant, or if you like, a favorite way of thinking. So try all 3 when you're dealing, especially with a group of people. Assume that different people in the group are going to be appealed to in different ways. Sometimes you can send people, give people notes or pages of figures, and they'll look at them and they won't even look at them at all because they're auditory or kinesthetic, they're not visual. Okay, this brings us to number 13. Number 13 is a powerful thinking tool to stimulate creativity called zero-based thinking. Zero-based thinking comes from the financial concept, which is zero-based financing or zero-based budgeting. What it says is that you draw a line under all of your previous thinking and you ask yourself over and over again, if we were not now doing things this way, knowing what we now know, would we start doing them this way? If we had not decided to handle this product or service or to embark upon this investment or divestment, knowing what we now know, would we start again? Would we start again? Now, if the question is no, then it's a very good indicator that you're on the wrong track and that you may be staying on the wrong track simply because nobody wants to rock the boat. If the answer in zero-based thinking is yes, it usually means that you're on the right track. So ask yourself over and over again, especially in a problem situation, knowing what we now know about this situation, this person, this investment, so on, would we begin again knowing what we now know? And if the answer is no, then the next question is, how do we begin changing? How do we alter the situation? How do we start over again? Number 14 is what we call the systematic method of problem solving. It's probably the most powerful of all. The systematic method has 9 simple steps. It's probably the most powerful method, if you like, to deal with complex problems that I've ever seen in my life. And it's so simple, it's embarrassing. Number 1 is always assume a logical solution. And remember, your attitude toward a problem is going to determine whether or not you release your creativity or your creativity stays locked up. So assume that there's a logical solution to whatever problem it is. Number 2 is use positive language. Use words like challenge or situation. Use positive language rather than problem or difficulty. Say, boy, this is an interesting challenge facing us. Or this is an interesting situation. Keep your mind positive. Number 3 is define it clearly. What is the situation? Define it clearly, write it down, and come up with a definition that everybody agrees that that is a definition of the problem or situation. Number 4 is ask yourself, what are all the possible causes? Just like a doctor would do a diagnosis to try to find the causes of the problem before you would come up with a prescription. Number 5 is ask yourself, what are all the possible solutions? By the way, most of this method, or part of this method, was developed at Harvard University in one of their creative thinking laboratories. What are all the possible solutions? Number 6 is make a decision. Whatever you do, any decision is probably better than no decision. Did I say solution? Make a decision. Now, one critical point here, one critical point is once you make a decision and you start thinking about solutions, then from then on, think and talk only about the solutions. Think and talk exclusively, single-mindedly about solutions. From then on, don't talk about the problems. The difference between positive thinkers and negative thinkers is very simple. Positive thinkers think and talk about solutions all the time. Negative thinkers continue to talk about the problem. Now, the more you think about it and talk about it and vividly imagine, the more you're going to have of it. So if you dwell on the solution, you will get solutions. If you dwell on the problem, you'll have more problems. Number 7 is assign responsibility. Assign responsibility. Who's going to do it? This is where many of these exercises break down, is because nobody decides who's going to pin the bell on the cat's tail. So assign responsibility. Who is going to do what and by when? And that's number 8, set a deadline. A decision without a deadline is merely a discussion. Set a deadline on who is going to do what by when, and agree specifically and repeat it and get commitment from other people. And number 9 is take action. Take action. Remember, the whole purpose of creative thinking, the whole purpose of innovation, the whole purpose of problem solving is to prepare you and the people around you and your organization to take positive, constructive action toward achieving specific desired results. If action is not taking place, then the whole exercise of creative thinking is just an exercise in intellectual amusement. So always be thinking in terms of action. What are the actions that we're going to take? How are we going to implement this solution? Who is going to be the implementer? Who is going to execute the solution that we come up with? And how is the solution going to be measured? Who is going to be in charge of it? When are we going to review it? How are we going to monitor it? How are we going to test it in the marketplace? How are we going to get feedback to tell us whether or not it's a good idea? Every good solution, by the way, has not only an action plan, but a monitoring, controlling, and testing plan built into it so you can see whether the solution was any good. All right, number 15, method for stimulating creativity. One of the most powerful methods in the world of business is brainstorming. One of the major responsibilities of management today is to engage their people in brainstorming exercises regularly. You cannot afford to leave the creative potential of your staff untapped. You've got to get them to contribute ideas, and the only way you do it is to bring them together regularly on company time, give them specific problems or company goals to solve or achieve, and put them to work to get their best thinking out. Now, brainstorming has some key points. I'll give it to you very quickly. Key point number 1 is that you should ideally have 4 to 7 people. 4 to 7 seems to be the best idea to get mental synergy. B is it should be 15 to 45 minutes. Be very specific with the time period, because you don't want a brainstorming session to go all afternoon. 30 minutes is ideal. Number C is quantity. Go for the greatest number of ideas without evaluation. Don't judge the ideas. Just say, let's see how many different ideas we can come up with to deal with this problem in the next 30 minutes. D, very simple, is record every idea. Record ideas for evaluation later. Leave evaluation out of it. Just concentrate on idea generation. E is the leader should be the facilitator. The leader is just the facilitator, is not the person who dominates the conversation, but who encourages everybody else to contribute. In fact, if you're the manager and you're the leader, the less you say, the better. If you're also the recorder, what you can do is just write your ideas down while the other people are contributing, but let them contribute the ideas. F is no ridicule. Every idea is okay. The more people laugh in a brainstorming session, the more likely you are to come up with great ideas. And the final point here is that is to suspend judgment throughout. Again, suspended judgment is a key part of creative thinking in every single study. It is the tendency for us to judge internally and externally that shuts down the flow of creativity. Judgment attacks our self-esteem, undermines our sense of value, causes us to shut up and to back off. So avoid judgment. Number 16, and these are Drucker's seven sources of innovation from Peter Drucker. One of the best books ever written on the subject is called Innovation and Entrepreneurship. by Peter Drucker, the business genius, and he has 7 sources of innovation. In other words, where are the new ideas, products, and processes for your business going to come from for now and the indefinite future? The first source is what he calls the unexpected event. The unexpected success, the unexpected failure, the unexpected event, something that happens that shouldn't happen, that was not expected to happen. Unexpected outside event. For instance, a perfect example. Apple Computer came out and decided to launch a small home computer at a time when IBM looked at the market and said the market wasn't big enough. Apple went out and sold $1 billion worth of computers, and it changed the thinking of not only IBM, but of every major computer manufacturer in the world. It was an unexpected event. The market exploded where it had never been before. Another unexpected event, which everybody knows about, was the oil crisis, the Arab oil embargo, which caused oil prices to go through the ceiling. That creates a tremendous number of opportunities for innovation, new products, new processes, new services. Another is incongruity, an incongruity between reality and what should be. In other words, when things are supposed to happen in a certain way and they don't. You run an ad, you do a campaign, you launch a product or a service, and nothing happens. Or you launch it, and with a little bit of advertising, it explodes. And incongruity, a perfect example is Sir Alexander Fleming's discovery of penicillin. He found that some mold had dropped on an agar dish and had destroyed his experiment. Now, most people would have just taken the dish and thrown it out. What Fleming did is he said, why has this happened? This wasn't supposed to happen. And he discovered penicillin, which, of course, changed the future of longevity and lifespan and everything else. Okay, another major source of innovation is process need. Process need is just simply a breakthrough, a technology, a technique, a system, something that you need in order, inside the company, in order to do the job better. A process need is something that you can use to overcome an obstacle, to overcome a limiting factor in production. It's when you sit there and say, how do we get from here to there? And you need a new innovation. And many process needs or many new innovations are coming up as a result of high tech. The D, or for the fourth one, is changes in industry structure. Changes in industry structure as a result of a variety of different things that can happen. Let's look at some of the things that I've got down here. When we had the oil price shock, because of high oil prices, we found that the industry structure changed. People went to small cars. People went to using less energy. We had the introduction of solar panels. We had the introduction of windmills. We had the introduction of energy-saving devices that in the billions of dollars all over the country. So the industry structure changed as the result of something that was totally unexpected. So be on the alert for changes in industry structure. When about 20 years ago, it was predicted that there would only be 2 major car manufacturers in America by 1990. Right now, there are 26 manufacturers of cars in America. GM, which had the lion's share, has been losing market share consistently for 10 years. Why? Well, because the industry structure has changed as a result of demand for quality, smaller cars, more efficiency, safety, and so on. Demographic changes are another thing. Demographic changes are a major change that signal opportunities for innovation and entrepreneurship. A demographic change is the number of seniors, yuppies, movement of people from the north and east to the south and west. These are changes that signal tremendous opportunities in home building, construction, styles, insurance, Medicare, and so on. And 2 more is changes in perception, changes in values. A perfect example of changes in perception or values is the health boom that's going on now. People are into lifestyle health, light beer, fresh fruits, salads, and so on and so forth. Creates tremendous market within health foods, spices, herbs, teas, clothes. And finally, new knowledge. New knowledge, which is the least dependable because it takes so long to get into the marketplace, but new knowledge, new technological breakthroughs of any kind can offer innovations that can open the door for whole new industries and multi-million-dollar businesses. So be on the alert for the unexpected events. Even an unexpected success in selling your product or service could tell you that there's a tremendous market opportunity there. This brings us to a simple method called number 17, nominal group technique. Nominal group technique is a very simple technique which just means finish the statement. Finish the statement. So you just simply pose a question to a group of people and you have each one of them finish the statement. It's a form of organized brainstorming. Nominal group technique, you could say, for instance, we could double our sales if. we could double our sales if. And then you let people finish the sentence, and you encourage them to generate as many ideas as possible to double your sales. We could double our sales if we doubled our advertising. We could double our sales if we cut our price in half. We could double our sales if our competitors all quit. Maybe we could double our sales if we could differentiate ourselves sufficiently from our competitors. Maybe we could double our sales if we came up with a new product or process or combination thereof. But imagine if there's one chance in 1,000 that you could double your sales. Why not there being 2 chances in 1,000? Why not 3 chances in 1,000? What if there is a way that you could double your sales in the next 12 months and it's lying right under your own feet and you're not finding it because you're not looking for it? So be alert to that. Number 18 is what is called lateral thinking. Lateral thinking was pioneered by De Bono, and the best way that De Bono describes this is by saying that when people find themselves in a hole, the natural tendency is for them simply to dig the hole deeper, when actually the solution may be to go somewhere else and dig a totally different hole. Lateral thinking is a way of breaking yourself out of the routinized or habitual ways of thinking. And here's some basic simple ideas. Reversal is one, where you take words and you reverse their meaning. A perfect example is you take a problem and you call it an opportunity. You say, boy, this is a great opportunity. And then you look into it and you find the great opportunity. Or another way of reversal is you could say, people say, well, our sales are down. Well, you can reverse that and say, no, sales aren't down, purchases are down. In other words, it's not that we are not selling enough, but our customers are not buying enough. Changes the whole focus of the question. Here's another one, random association. Take a look at like an apple or an artichoke and say, well, our business is like an apple, or our business is like an orange. Well, on the outside, it looks pretty smooth, but as you get close, you see a lot of bumps. Inside, there's a lot of pits, although there are some juicy parts and so on. Random association means pick words and force the words to fit your situation. Here's another one, is the dominant idea. A dominant idea is shift the dominant idea. Another example, which we repeat over and over again, if the dominant idea is that we have a real problem here, maybe the dominant idea is that we have a real profit opportunity. For instance, if the dominant idea is that we're suffering a loss, imagine that the flip side of the loss is a profit. Maybe the loss that we're suffering will enable us to make a profit by doing or changing something else. So look at the dominant idea and shift your attention away from it to maybe the opposite idea. Look at the other person's viewpoint. The other person's viewpoint is where you take a look and you try to see the other person's situation through their eyes and describe it through their eyes, very much as lawyers do. When a lawyer is dealing with a problem with someone else, what he does is, as an exercise, he argues the case from the other person's point of view, from the other person's legal grounds, before he or she prepares his own case. And finally, fantasize. A fantasize is a wonderful way of creative thinking. What you do is you imagine you had a magic wand and you could wave it and all of your problems or your major problem would disappear. If that were to happen, and you did have this magic wand and you waved it and your problems disappeared, what would your situation look like? Imagine what it would look like if this major obstacle that's standing in your way were removed. Pretend as if it is not even there and say, now what difference would that make? What would we do differently? What opportunities would open up for us? What possibilities? And then start to look and see, would it be possible for us to achieve those possibilities even without removing the obstacles? And this brings us to number 19. Here are some questions that you can use to spark curiosity. These are questions that you use with regard to your products and services, and they're some of the best questions going. Number one is, could we put our products or services, or could you put your products or services to other uses, other than the uses that they're being applied to now? Could they be put to other uses for other companies, other industries, other customers? Number two is, could we adapt or copy or emulate something else that someone else is doing to make our products or services better? Could you copy something? What are your competitors doing, or what are other people doing that you could copy? Number three is, could you modify or change your existing product so that it looked like or performed like something different? Could you put a new twist in it? Number four is, could you magnify the product? Could you add something? Could you make it bigger? Could you make it stronger, higher, longer? Could you increase it in some way in order to make it more attractive? Could you minify the product? Could you make it smaller? Could you break it down into its component parts? Could you sell smaller parts of it? Substitute. Who else could you use for this product or service? What else could you use? Could you use a different substance, a different process of manufacturing, a different way of distribution, a different way of advertising, a different way of packaging? What could you substitute for your product, your service, or your existing problem? Could you rearrange your product and interchange components in some way? Could you reverse or do the opposite of what you're currently doing? One of the reversals that I used many years ago was, instead of lowering the price to clear out an overstock, I raised the price to clear out an overstock, and because of the higher perceived value, we cleared out product that we had not been able to move for 6 months. Another thing you do is, instead of selling your product, give the product away, but then charge them for the materials that they need for using the product once they have it. Another way. And finally, could you combine your product with something else? Could you combine ideas, purposes, appeals? Could you put it together to make higher value added? And this finally brings us to number 20. Number 20 is what is called the value engineering principle. Value engineering, which just simply asks some really key questions. The key questions are, with regard to your new idea, number one is, what is it? That's something. What is it? Describe it through the mind of a consumer. And number two, ask yourself, that's a B. Number two, ask yourself, what does it do? What does it do? C, these are very, very simple techniques which to look at innovations. Number C is, what does it cost? And D, what else will do the same job? And E is, what does that cost? For instance, what this does very often is it leads you to outsourcing. It leads you to seeing that instead of doing it internally, yes, we could produce it internally, but if you put all this together, we could do it outsourced. We could get another company to produce it that has better capacities, better facilities, and so on. And finally, I'll leave you with number 21. Number 21 is criteria for judging your ideas. Once you come up with an idea, remember, ideas are a dime a dozen. The 99 out of 100 ideas are no good. That 80%, 90% of all innovations that make it to the marketplace after testing and research fail. So here's how you can judge your ideas so you can increase your success rate, lower your failure rate. Here's some questions. First of all, is it effective? Will it work? That's the first question. Will it work, and will it work meaningfully? Is it a good enough idea? Is it going to make a meaningful difference or a meaningful improvement? Number two is it efficient? Is it a significant improvement over what is currently being done? I've seen many people come into the market with products or services, and they say, well, people will buy it because we're really going to sell it hard. But you have to ask, what's going to stop them from buying something that they already have, that they're happy with, and buy yours? Just because you're selling it? Just because you're producing it? Just because you'll make a profit on it? Your product always has to be a significant improvement over what currently exists. Is it compatible with human nature? In other words, is it compatible with the way people like to shop? You heard about television shopping a few years ago. You don't hear about television shopping. People buying their groceries and their clothes and everything by ordering through a department store through a television modem. Do you know why? It's because human beings like to touch, taste, smell, feel, and they like the experience of live shopping. People will never do much television shopping except for straight commodity items because it's contrary to human nature. Is it compatible with your goals? When you come up with an idea, remember, you could have a great idea, but if the idea is not compatible with what you want to accomplish with your life, if you don't love the idea enough to want to commit yourself wholeheartedly to it, maybe you should pass it on to someone else. Number 5, is the timing right? Is it practical now? Sometimes an idea is too soon or too late. Is the timing right for this idea? For instance, you may have a great idea for a luxury product, but if it's in the middle of a recession, it's not a good idea. You may have a great idea for a discount product, but if it's in the middle of a boom, people don't care that much. Is it feasible? Is it worth it? Is it a feasible idea, and is it worth it to engage in the activity, the cost, the expense to produce it? And finally, is it simple? And that's the final question, because in the final analysis, almost all great innovations and breakthroughs are simple. They can be explained in 25 words or less. The customer in the marketplace can hear a description of the innovation and say, yes, that's good. That makes sense. That's what I want. I'll take it. That's what I need. I can use it. I can afford it. In other words, it has to be simple because it has to be designed, packaged, and sold by ordinary people. And ordinary people are not necessarily that competent. It has to be bought by ordinary people. And ordinary people are not geniuses. They don't have the time, the effort to think through the product. So is the idea simple? I'll just refer you back to the superconscious capability, your intuitive mind. And I'll tell you this, is that from that mind you will get great breakthrough ideas. If you know what you want, if you accept your innate intelligence, if you look upon yourself as a creative person, if you repeat over and over again, I am a genius, I am a genius, I am a genius, you will be able to stimulate creativity, come up with breakthrough ideas, come up with answers to your problems, come up with creative solutions with greater speed in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months than you can currently believe possible. You can become one of the great creative managers of your generation.